via Skype this afternoon. Hello to you, Lisa, and I'm sure there's much to talk about what the President said today. I, however, would like to get your reaction on these 3 amendments coming through. In a nutshell, is this going to make a difference, do you think?
Yes, it will, but it's not the difference the government wants. I'm afraid the one dealing with the criminal law sexual offences amendments that are trying to increase the harshness of sentences and bail, the effect they're going to have is to increase the prison population, which I'm afraid doesn't really do much to address violence against women. I think the problem with both those 2 bills is that they're coming at the problem from the wrong end. They are assuming that government is doing an incredibly effective job in securing convictions for rape. At about 8%, 9%, I'm afraid that's not true. So what they've done is focus right at the end of the system rather than focusing at the front end. The whole problem that we're having around reporting, around arrests and around prosecution. These bills do nothing to improve that, and they're a missed opportunity. I think if the government had wanted to do something about rape, they would have done best to look at, can we make the system more inquisitorial, and how do we improve the policing and the investigation of rape and the prosecution of rape? The domestic violence amendments are, I think, somewhat more mixed. Some of those amendments are going to be very helpful. Some of them are deeply concerning, and I don't think they reflect what is considered best practice based on available evidence globally.
So in a nutshell, the idea is there, as is always the case, the devil's in the details. In this case, the devil is in the execution of this. Prosecutorially, how does the government change that particular problem when it comes to the prosecution of these cases? Too many of them, Lisa, are being brought into the country's courts and are being slapped with small fines and small penalties on the wrist. How do we try and increase that at the beginning or at the end?
I think if we look at the sentencing of rape, then probably from some research that I was part of, about 20% of rapes are not resulting in the minimum sentencing. So that's a concern. But 80% are. So the question we have to ask is, what is happening at those particular courts or areas where we know that these rapes are resulting in fines or correctional supervision or suspended sentences? But again, focusing on sentences is the wrong place to start. The place to start is arrests. There are only about arrests being made in about half of all reported rapes. And those where we are least likely to see arrests are the stranger rapes. So that's telling us we have a problem with the quality of police investigation, possibly not enough investigators. Then I think if we look at how many of those rapes that result in arrest actually make it to trial, or about a third make it to court. So we're losing between arrest and making it to court. We're losing a whole lot of cases, which again is talking to you and telling you about the quality of evidence gathering. But probably about only 18%, or 1 in 5, actually start trial. So again, we've got to look at the vast majority of cases that are never actually making it to trial, those 80%. And the problems relate in the quality of the statements that the police take, which is a question of training. It has also to do with the fact that all evidence is not gathered. So I think there what we need to be working on is how do we strengthen the role of prosecutors in making police investigations much more prosecutor-guided? What do we do about the quality of forensic and medico-legal evidence? So what do we need to do with the health system in order to strengthen their capacity? And I think once we get a case ready for trial, it's how do we strengthen the ability of all prosecutors to prosecute? We can't just rely on all rape cases going to the sexual offences courts. In parts of the country, there are no sexual offences courts, and an ordinary prosecutor will be dealing with the matter. So it's a question of looking at skills, presentation of evidence, and then procedure in court. So how do we shift from that very adversarial, hostile environment that we've seen sometimes in television? We think of Cheryl Zondi's matter, I think is the one that will stick out in people's minds, to something that is much more inquisitorial. And those are all the questions that unfortunately just weren't considered.
Lisa, just a final question, as brief as you can, and I realize this needs a lot more time. Just off the back of what you're saying in your final answer, a lot of this doesn't build confidence for GBV victims and rape victims to come forward because they possibly are thinking, what's the point? Nothing's going to come of this. Is that assessment fair from my side?
Under some circumstances, no. There will be an effort. If it's a certain kind of rape, there will be a lot of effort put into your case. For most cases, that's not an unfair assessment.
All right, Lisa Vetten, thank you very much. Always a pleasure having you here on ENCA, speaking to us on Women's Day. Lisa Vetten, of course, a gender activist from Wits University's Institute for Social and Economic Research. Well,